And Mr. Kalish, could you take the roll, please?
Carroll,
Here.
Murphy Lopez, Brewer,
Here.
Seep, McKee,
Here.
Renish, Luck, Manning, Gotchel, Glassburner, Rudersdorf, Gentis, Turk, Cosgrove, Frank, Severson will be absent, Williamson,
Here.
Hui,
Here.
Fleming,
Here.
Voice, and McGuire. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kalish. Pastor Engel is here to lead us in invocation, and then after that, please remain standing for the pledge.
Well, good evening. This morning, when a member of 5 Points found out that I had to pray with you tonight, they sent me a text message. The member was Walter Gust, who recently turned 86 years old, and Walter served as a Richland County Board Supervisor from 1982 to 1990, and then again from 2008 to 2012. Don Seep will likely agree with me when I say that Walter was and is today quite a colorful character. So here's what his text message said. Larry, try not to make prayer at the county last too long. Unless, smiley face, unless you are asking the Lord to entrust the board with special powers to override the dean of Platteville, the legislature, UW presidents, and ex-governors. So Larry, pray for special powers for the county board or be very short. So I was trying to figure out, what do I do with that? So here we go. Let us pray. Richland County Board of Supervisors, during this sacred season, may the Lord fill your hearts, minds, and souls with holy wisdom as you make difficult decisions. A holy wisdom that's infused with gentleness and justice, compassion and kindness, love and tenderness, especially for the most vulnerable among us, the widows and the orphans, as the Bible calls them. Lord God, Richland County is blessed to have each of these county board members, and in the coming difficult decisions they face, bless them and grant them holy wisdom tonight and in days to come. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag which stands one nation, justice.
Thank you, Pastor Engel and Clerk Kalish. Before you, you have a 24-point agenda. Looking for a motion to approve. Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Manning. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Now, I am going to make a couple changes in that agenda in the order. I probably should have done that first, but I didn't. The minutes of the October 25th meeting. Do I hear any corrections or modifications, or I'm just going to declare those approved as published? Now, I think most of the folks here tonight are here to listen to our discussion and our resolution on the UW system regarding the UW Richland campus. So therefore, I would like to move item 19 up in order to be addressed next, and then I will also ask an audit report, which is down here in number 22 in the audit, or the reports, Administrators Report Ad Hoc Referendum and the audit report. I'm going to take that after the resolution regarding the campus. So, Mr. Kalish, could you, or Mr. Wendell, I don't remember who we drafted on this, but could you please acquaint us with the resolution?
Now therefore be it resolved, Richland County implores the UW system to return a full-time recruiter to the UW campus, and be it further resolved, Richland County submits a budget request for $4 million for the 2023-2024 academic year to the UW system to abide by the terms of the MOA, which is Memorandum of Agreement, to maintain a branch campus at UW Richland campus, and be it further resolved, Richland County requests a professional outside mediator to be present during any further negotiations where UW Platteville staff are present, and be it further resolved, a portion of the farmland shall be removed from the MOA for an environmentally sensitive housing development with property tax proceeds dedicated to the ongoing upkeep and maintenance of the UW Richland campus, and be it further resolved, Richland County shall work with the UW system to determine a mutually beneficial minimum level of student enrollment required to keep UW campus as a branch campus, and be it further resolved, Richland County shall also work with the UW system to determine clear annual targets to quickly return to the minimum student enrollment level, and be it further resolved that the county clerk transmit a copy of this resolution and the attached presentation to Governor Tony Evers, the governor's deputy policy director, Katie Domina, UW System President Jay Rothman, each individual member of the UW Board of Regents, UW Platteville Interim Chancellor Tammy Ivedovich, UW Platteville Assistant Provost Michael Compton, State Senator Howard Markline, State Assembly Representative Travis Tranel, State Assembly Representative Todd Novak, State Assembly Representative Tony Kurtz, and Wisconsin Counties Association President Mark O'Connell. Resolution presented to you by the Education Standing Committee on December 12th.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Are you making the motion to approve back there? Ms. Gentis, I would imagine you are, and seconded by Barbara Voice. Yes, Ms. Gentis. It's not working.
Is it on? Okay, there we go. All right. Eventually I'd like maybe us to read the whole resolution if they like. And before we have any further discussion, if it's okay with the chair, I'd like to have a presentation that gives a background of why this resolution would be appropriate. And then I have one speaker that I would like to speak about this entity, okay?
I'm aware there are other speakers among the students especially, so we'll have at least two of them address us. Okay, Sean, I think that you're cued here for your presentation, so without further ado, let's have it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Ms. Scott's going to advance the slides, but if county board members or the public are following, county board members, it's 19A in your folders, and the public, I'm not sure if it's uploaded yet to the website, but I'm sure it will be if it's not soon, but you can look at it on the screen. So on the second slide here, the status of the UW Richland campus. I'm just going to give an overview of the problem, about our community, and how to move forward.
You got to go back. She's gone.
The second one.
Okay.
Yep, that's just what I said, but now you can move to the third slide. So this is the big problem that we've been dealing with, is this plummeting school and student enrollment at UW Richland. A lot of us are aware of it, and we've been getting better numbers lately from the UW system. So the next slide, a lot of people are wondering why is this happening? We've all been asking this and trying to figure this question out. So we pulled some data from the whole state, the whole UW system, all the technical colleges. And there was a student peak in about 2011, and it's been slowly declining since then. But you can tell just looking at these numbers, this is nothing like what we're dealing with in Richland. And if you go to the next slide where it says figure 9 at the top, it shows the different four-year campuses in blue. 3 of them have had increasing student enrollment in the last 10 years, Madison, Green Bay, and La Crosse. The rest of them have been declining. The tech colleges have gone down by 20%. And the former UW colleges, which is what we are, has gone down by over 40%. So on the next slide, you can see the former UW colleges highlighted. We're in this batch right here. So we've gone down 84%. That's more than double what the rest of the UW colleges have gone down. So something unique is going on here in Richland that is not happening anywhere else across the state. So on the next slide, this is just showing since 1973, basically since we came into existence as a UW system school instead of a teacher's college, what our enrollment's been. It's always been above 200 up until 2019. That was the first year we ever fell below 200. We had 400 just 8 years ago. We had a thriving campus out there. So you can see in this red rectangle here on the next slide, this is when regionalization happened. And Supervisor Gentis has taught me regionalization is when they put Richland, Baraboo, and Rock County together. They combined a bunch of staff. So instead of having our own staff, they combined a bunch of stuff. So we started to see a big drop there. Then the next rectangle, this is restructuring. Fancy words, but they just put us now under Platteville here. So now we lose even more staff. And I'm going to talk about one particular staff person that we lost that really has made a big difference in a couple slides here. But this next one, it has a heading that says regionalization and restructuring eliminated. And there's a picture of there's a photo out from the day that Platteville took over. And this is what we've lost through that restructuring and that previous regionalization. We lost a dean. We lost a recruiter that was doing 55 annual school visits a year, 11 out of 18 faculty or professors. We don't have a marketing plan anymore. We didn't have a strategic plan. I think they're just starting to figure that out down in Platteville. We learned today that they need to do that. We lost our international coordinator, including all that money from international students. We used to, they don't pay in-state tuition, so they were bringing a lot more money in. Continuing education program, youth options program, and pilot academic alliance program. All those have been lost. So that one position, the second bullet, position of recruiter, we've been hearing, honestly, I'd heard a lot from people before that this was happening, but it kind of sounded a little far-fetched, and there were not written stories. And then all of a sudden, this is happening, and more written stories are coming out in the past few months. And especially since Thanksgiving, all these people have been stepping forward, including some of the people in this room today, especially I'm looking at the students here. So in 2018, so Mike Brenninger came to our education committee meeting in September, and he submitted written testimony and he gave verbal testimony to this effect too. He said he called the Platteville admissions office to understand the terms of a new agreement for the admission of international Eagle School students to UW Richland. He's the administrator for Eagle School. After some extensive discussion, the man on the phone in Platteville said, "Why don't you just send all the students to Platteville instead of Richland?" And I'm going to go chronological. That's kind of how we organize this, because we're hearing from all these different people in the community. And so this next person, this Rebecca Smith, she graduated in 2014 from UW Richland back when we had 400 students. This is a picture from her days at Richland. She wanted to be a recruiter for Richland. That was kind of her dream. And so she started applying she had to go to Platteville, of course, to try to get the job. She said, "The first time I applied for a recruiter position, they wanted to keep the position at Platteville, only visiting the branch campuses as necessary, and asked a lot of details about willingness to travel, even splitting days between the campuses with only an office in Platteville. There was a strong emphasis during the second interview on how to decide if branch campuses, so Richland and Baraboo, or the main campus, Platteville, would be a better fit for the student. The questions all seemed geared toward answering that Platteville was the best recommendation, regardless of student background and circumstances." The next year, after Mike Brenninger had that incident on the phone, Terry Sobronic and the rest of the UW Richland Foundation, he's the president of that foundation, they decided things are heading south, we can tell. Let's just get a recruiter. We'll pay for the recruiter. So they call him up. They offer to pay for the salary of a full-time recruiter dedicated just to our campus. And that offer was rejected by Platteville. Chancellor Shields said it was not our responsibility here in Richland to do recruiting. So no, thank you. By the way, these are all written words that people have submitted or checked. So it's not just hearsay. Emily Lund, she's a sophomore. She's right here at the end. One of the students. She said, when sounds like you were in high school at the time and talking to a recruiter. When I asked the Platteville recruiter about going to UW Richland, she couldn't give me any more information besides that it was located in Richland Center. Jackson Kinney, who's also here right next to Emily, he said, in my junior and senior years at Riverdale High School in Muscadet, no one from Platteville came to talk about UW Richland ever in those whole 2 years. No one said a word about Richland, any recruiter. On the next slide, Brody Smith, he's at the other end, second from the left there. He's from Highland. He's a freshman. He said, we never had a recruiter come to Highland in my time in high school. If my high school peers had known that UW Richland feels like Highland with its small community atmosphere, I know that I wouldn't have been the only Highland student to come to UW Richland. And he said that to Ron Fruit on the morning show a little over a week ago. Next slide here, Kathy Fry, some of you will know her. She used to work at the school district. She was the foreign exchange director for the Richland Center, High School. She's second from the right. She's with a bunch of UW Richland international students here in this photo. She said in January of 2021, when she was working at the high school, she began working on an international program. My hope was to send students from the high school onto UW Richland, which would help campus enrollment. We had one video meeting with Platteville, and it was honestly very discouraging. The person I talked with told me there would be no guarantee that students would go on to UW Richland, that they wouldn't necessarily be steered to our campus, but could go on to any school in the whole UW system. I thought it odd at the time, but now I'm pretty sure there was no intention of continuing our international program. And then back to Mike Brenninger, he tried again. You know, he keeps trying here. In the admission season for this school year, so just several months back, some Eagle students attempted to enroll at Richland, but could not navigate the enrollment process. The process seemed so confusing, the student dropped the application and enrolled somewhere else. He told other Eagle students it was very difficult to enroll at Richland, so they just all decided to go somewhere else. And then last one here, this is Rhonda Scallon, the Basketball School District Guidance Counselor, and Jackson Kinney talked to her and got this quote. And she said, it's been several years since someone has recruited for UW Richland at basketball. So then the last thing, and this comes from another student who's here. He's on the very left side, Jake Steele. He's a sophomore at campus right now. And we've been hearing from President Rothman, you know, the quality of education's gone down in Richland. You got to close it. It's not what students expect. He says, regarding this idea from UW system, Rothman, that the campus wasn't offering the quality level of experience we deserved, he did not inquire or communicate with students. I, along with a large number of UW Richland students, have had an overwhelmingly positive overall experience. So that's kind of the negative side. And, you know, we don't want to dwell on the negative. We want to propose a solution moving forward, but we have to explain the negative, because how in the world did we lose 84% of our students? It just doesn't make sense. We've been blaming ourselves. Other people have been blaming us. I felt like I didn't do enough. I know Linda felt like probably she didn't do enough at certain points. We've really been kind of kicking ourselves. And I think all those stories now are finally, it just feels like more truth is coming out. And we got to move on from that. We can't stay stuck in the past, but that's why we need to talk about our strengths. So I think one of the strengths that I've learned about really in the past week or two, I really didn't understand this fully, probably until I met Autumn. She's fourth from the left, and her mom, Jennifer Carter, contacted me as well. Affordability and geographic accessibility for lower income and working people. Jennifer Carter, Autumn's mom, wrote, that Autumn has enjoyed this year and the financial support along with the closeness to home, which allows us to help provide support for her. Autumn also went through our 4-H program that we fund at the county. So it's actually how I met her the first time. On the next slide here, we obviously have had a big international program and that's helped us out a lot. This is Luis Alvarado from Guatemala. And he talked about how this is such a good place to begin, to take that freshman and sophomore year. And it launched him into other places in life, thanks to his education here. Next slide here, small class sizes. Someone from DeForest, Wisconsin wrote that her daughter, the help that she got from professors and staff here really let her succeed to have a happy, excellent education, better than she would have received by starting at a bigger 4-year college. In the next slide, the international program, Kathy Fry, who had talked to the Platteville before, she worked at the high school. They hosted 15 international students over the years who went to UW Richland and believes it's a great cultural center for Southwest Wisconsin. And then the last thing that's really a strength of ours is that we have a progressive history regarding female leadership. Most of you, or a lot of you probably know Marge Wallace. I never had the luck to meet her. She just passed away 4 years ago, but she was the founder of the UW Richland campus, along with a lot of other people, but she led the charge. She was also the first woman in Wisconsin to serve as the head person at the campus. She was our dean back in the 70s, I believe. So the community support that we've got, I know several of you probably heard this, the student body really led the interviews. I probably only met, a lot of us only met them, I think, because they started doing interviews. They took this on themselves. So a lot of TV stations, radio, newspaper. We had over 1,500 petition signatures in 14 days. There's copies of the petition on the back counter there, if anyone wants to see a paper copy. We've got a Facebook group. Quite a few people have donated for yard signs. We passed a resolution back in June requesting the state increase the campus budget back to 2015 levels. Now that we have more data, I think we have a little bit of a different idea tonight to pitch to the board here. And the education committee back in November forwarded a resolution to the county board requesting we return a full-time recruiter. Then of course Rothman made his announcement, and now we have a different resolution that incorporates that one with some new stuff, given what's happened. So the status of the campus, a lot of people have been, we've been talking about this. I think a lot of us know the county owns 134 acres. So in this picture, we own the whole campus, the buildings, but then we also own that farmland behind. I think there's about 30 acres, and then the woods behind as well. That's all owned by the county. It's leased through the, with the UW system. There's a memorandum of agreement and a lease. Mr. Wendell's taught me that. They go hand in hand and they go through 2042. The UW system can leave the memorandum of agreement part each year on June 30th if budget appropriations from the state are not adequate, although there's another piece of that too, and that's listed in the resolution. The proposal that, a lot of us have been working on this, and the students gave their feedback on this last Tuesday. The education committee reviewed it yesterday, and I'm sure some members will maybe want to speak up about it. But the proposal that is in this presentation attached to the resolution right now as it stands is that we think we'd be a great 2-year pilot program for reviving branch campuses. We could show other 2-year campuses around the state how to bring it back. We think shifting oversight from UW Platteville to Madison is probably a good idea because they have exploding student enrollment right now. We could serve as a relief valve for them. The other thing is there's a chart on the next slide, and this shows the campus budget. So it's dropped from 3.1 million to 1.4 million, 55% drop. If we had followed inflation, it'd be up to 4 million today. So some people are saying that they keep pouring all this money into us and nothing changes. That's not true. They're not pouring all this money into us. They're cutting. They're cutting and cutting. I think the other thing that people are interested in is autonomy. We don't want to get stuck with another big bloated bureaucracy. We want to go back to local control so we can run the campus. So on the next slide, what's the niche? You know, what do we, Platteville always had a hard time explaining us. They didn't know what we were. You know, I sat in a lot of meetings and they tried to explain us. They never asked when I was around, at least. But affordability and geographic accessibility, we talked about that, but the foundation is well endowed for scholarships for freshmen and sophomores. These small class sizes, they could be a big help to Madison students from rural places who don't do good in the city, who aren't thriving in a four-year university surrounded by tens of thousands of students and people. It could ease their transition from a small town high school to a big city campus is sort of the idea here. Next slide, the international students. Richland Center is a welcoming place for international students to get their first 2 years out. We know that we're very used to working with international students in the community. Maybe we could focus on a Center for Rural Wisconsin, allowing students to get some certificate in rural studies. There's other colleges who do this. The University of Nebraska does it, and there's an image right there in the lower right-hand corner. So that's a proposal for the state. The proposal for the county in the presentation is we know we're dealing with levy limits and declining state shared revenues. And they've been putting the squeeze on us for 10, 20 years. And now we have a large resulting backlog in campus building maintenance. So the proposal for the county is to remove a portion, and it's where the red arrows are pointing in this image right here, of that 30 acres of the farmland from the memorandum of agreement. We have funds. It's going to be on the agenda. I think Linda wants to make an amendment for the housing authority item. We have funds to complete a development plan that would be environmentally friendly to deal with this sloping farmland that we'd have to be careful about. We're thinking the increased property taxes from development there could be dedicated to campus maintenance. We're dealing with this budget crunch with referendum committee. We got to bring in more income. So I think there's a willingness to do this now. And so I think that's why this is part of it. And who knows if we can pull all this off. Maybe UW could lead classes on engineering and development, or we could work with students there, students and professors. So proposal wrap up, last slide here. Annual funding request for the pilot program. This is in the resolution, $4 million for the next school year, going up to 4.2 million the year after that. Shifting oversight from Platteville to Madison, removing farmland acres from the agreement for housing development. And we think it's, I think we debated this with the students and we talked about with some other people, we got to start setting performance measures. Platteville wouldn't do that. I've sat in meetings and they would not do it because I think they knew they couldn't, was the issue, maybe just speculation on my part. But we got to set some goals because we got to get more students here if it's going to be worth our investment. So 125 students by next year and 200 students by the year following to go with that budget request. So that's the end. Thanks for listening. I'll stop.
Thank you, Sean. Linda, you were disappointed that the entire resolution was not read in its entirety?
Could we first have Dean Dion Kempthorne speak? And then I thought maybe it would be better if everybody knew the whole resolution. But if you don't think that's necessary, it's up to you.
Well,
but-
it's fine with me if we read the whole
Okay.
resolution.
Then
I think
can I have Dion Kempthorne speak to it and then read the whole resolution?
you may,
And then you go forward yourself?
sure. So Dean Kempthorne is our speaker. There he is.
You have to talk in the mic.
Hear me now, Linda?
It's on, he's just not close enough.
Like that? Oh, it doesn't have to be close. All right, very good. Thanks for allowing me to speak this evening. It's a pleasure to be with you and to hear the good proposals. Let me just start by saying that it's been said that there are two kinds of people: those that are gone but not forgotten, and those that are forgotten but not gone. Fearing I may belong to the second kind, let me introduce myself in a little bit more detail. As some of you may remember, I served as your campus dean from 1990 to 2001. Indeed, I'm proud of having the distinction of being the only dean to serve for 2 centuries. I've, I've come here tonight to thank the county board, members past and present, for their deep and abiding support of higher education. In fact, serving as the dean, UW Richland has been the honor of my life. It's also been said that old deans never die. They just lose their faculties. But let me risk a word. Please permit me to reflect on my own education as it may still be relevant to issues today. I was raised not far from here in the tiny town of Rui, in Greater Rui, actually was where I was settled. There I attended a 2-room country school from 1st through 8th grade. There were 4 of us in our 8th grade class. Then I attended Dubuque Senior High, where there were 400 students in a class. And finally, I attended UW-Madison, where there were 4,000 students in a class. My point is this: in significant ways, for individual students for whom quality education necessarily requires personal attention, my education seemed, in fact, to get worse as the schools got bigger. Tip O'Neill, remember the old congressman, liked to say that all politics is local. I think you might also say all education is local. My mantra at UW Richland was threefold. It was people, place, and program. That's to say, we needed, as often as we could, to examine who we were, where we were, and what to do with ourselves. And I always argued that the biggest thing about our campus was that it was small enough to succeed at the complex task of teaching and learning. As Emily Lund, one of our current students just over there, was quoted in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel when she was speaking to the system regents. She said, we're not just a statistic, we're actual people. I think that's a novel idea for you to consider. Imagine that, to really be somebody to somebody else. What a powerful thing, and how easily that power is lost in crowds, and how more readily it can be developed in close relationships. You'll notice from the weather outside that we're getting close to the winter solstice. Soon it will be the darkest day of the year. It's only a week away from now. This darkness I find sometimes dispiriting. But we're also, as you well know, close to our Festival of Lights and New Year's celebrations, which are just around the corner. And yet again, it's time to make resolutions. In this process, we may celebrate the past for sure, but we'll also want to make new promises. In the business at hand of creating a new UW Richland, I think it's a good time to remember that our state's motto is forward, and that the University of Wisconsin's motto is Numen Lumen. In going forward, I hope officials in our university system will see the light, and in working together with us, will enable our campus to shine far into the future. To do this, we will need to help one another, work hard, learn from one another, and teach our children well. So what I've come to say really is that we should make our new year bountiful with good ideas and good work. Continue to be of good cheer, and do not forget to remember to keep your resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Linda,
Yes.
do you want the reading now, or do you
I
want?
think it would be good to have the reading, and then I don't have any other speakers I'm asking this.
Okay, I'll call on Attorney Wendell once again, because Derek is suffering from something.
Resolution number 22-131, a resolution stating the position of the Richland County Board of Supervisors regarding the status of the UW Richland campus. Whereas student headcount enrollment at the UW Richland campus has dropped from over 400 in the 2012-2013 school year to 64 in the current 2022-2023 school year, and whereas the campus budget allocated by the state of Wisconsin has fallen from approximately $3.1 million in the 2012 to 2013 school year to $1.4 million in the current 2022-2023 school year. And whereas the Consumer Price Index shows that prices increased 25% between 2012 and 2022, and whereas if the UW Richland campus budget had kept pace with inflation, the annual budget for the campus in 2022 would have been $4 million. And whereas the UW Richland campus now has the smallest enrollment of any campus in the UW system, and whereas economic impact reports in 2006 and 2018 found the campus had an estimated $7 million direct impact in the Richland County area economy, and whereas the working people of Richland County paid for the construction of the campus in 1967 and have maintained it for 55 years with their countywide property and sales tax revenues, and whereas a full-time recruiter is the #1 priority for our campus, and whereas a college campus in our local community gives working people and their kids the opportunity to attend a local university so they can gain an education and then earn a better living, and whereas UW System President Jay Rothman issued a directive on November 22nd, 2022 to interim Chancellor Vidovich to, quote, develop a plan to adjust the offerings at the Richland campus by transitioning the in-person degree instructional programs at Richland to the main UW Platteville campus, end quote, and whereas testimonials have been received from students, alumni, K-12 school staff, and community members that recruitment for the UW Richland campus was not being faithfully carried out by UW Platteville, and whereas state elected officials have been misinformed of the facts, including State Senator Howard Markline, who stated on December 11th, 2022, that in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, quote, enrollment continued to decline no matter how much money, resources, and attention the UW system invested, end quote, and whereas the UW Richland campus niche is affordability, small class sizes, an international program, rural setting, and geographic accessibility for lower income and working people, and whereas a petition with 1,500 signatures asked that Governor Evers, Senator Markline, Assemblyman Kurtz, and President Rothman meet with the community to share ideas about how to save the campus, and whereas the county board has already passed resolution 22-72 requesting the state increase the budget to 2015 levels, and whereas Richland County owns and leases the 134-acre campus to the UW system through a memorandum of agreement, MOA, through 2042, and whereas the MOA states the Board of Regents and Richland County have deemed it, quote, mutually advantageous to serve the educational needs of the people of Richland County area, by maintaining a branch campus, end quote, and whereas the MOA states it shall be automatically terminated as of June 30th of any year if, quote, A, appropriations by the legislature are insufficient to permit continued operation of the branch campus, B, state legislation concerning higher education in Wisconsin involves a fundamental change in the branch campus program, end quote, and whereas the MOA includes approximately 30 acres of sloping farmland behind the campus, and whereas Richland Center has a housing shortage as determined through a 2019 housing and workforce study, and whereas due to levy limits and reduced state shared revenues, Richland County government has struggled to maintain buildings on the campus, now therefore be it resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell. All right, I'll ask someone else to speak. If you do volunteer to say some words, identify yourself and grab a mic. Anyone? Judge Sharp? Thank you. No, I really
Have to use my.
Okay. Students, I think a couple of you though are ready, queued up. So I would ask you to identify yourself, grab a microphone. There's one right here at this chair. You may assume the chair and make sure the mic is on. You have to see the green light. Sounds like it's on. Please identify yourself.
So for those of you that don't know already, my name is Jake Steele. I'm a sophomore at UW Richland right now. I'm also the sophomore senator on campus. So right now, we students have been working to just organize events on campus, trying to keep students active and kind of just have opportunities to come together. And we received news, as you know, from the UW system that our campus would be closed. And as far as that goes, UW System President Jay Rothman had mentioned in the PowerPoint, issued that we were not getting the proper, unique college experience that we deserve. And I think that is preposterous for him to say that because there was no communication with us as students at all. I have had a positive experience. I know almost I should say, hopefully, every one of these students will say that they had a positive experience. And it's just unfair for us to be represented like that. So there was no communication by the system, by Platteville, like no inquiries, surveys, anything like that, phone calls, emails, nothing to ask about our experience. So through some of those events and just having that small town atmosphere, we've been able to get to know each other very well. It's a great vibe. And then, of course, as mentioned, the affordability is so important for so many students. A lot of people want to knock that because it's just like, oh, you just don't really care. But that's so important for students that come for these working backgrounds or lower income families. It is so important to them. And then also I'd like to mention the exchange student program. Every exchange student or out-of-state student that comes to UW Richland is going to bring 2 to 3 times the amount of money per year of tuition costs alone. And for example, Eagle School, which I graduated from, has right now in its high school about 80, maybe even 90% of the high school is exchange students. So that's like there are like 25, maybe 30 exchange students, several who are looking at going to UW Richland, and they have been turned down or denied or discouraged from applying through Platteville to UW Richland. As I mentioned, it was too difficult of a process. So I think that's really unfortunate that we lost an entire base right there. And I also have, he's not here today, an exchange student. His name is Justin or Chung Chi Young, and he stays with County Board Member Mrs. Glassbrenner, and he graduated with me, and he also has a lot of positive reports as a student going to UW Richland. It's been very influential for us, and it really helped us take that stepping stone into going into our future. Even though it's only 2 years, it helped us save a lot of money, get some classes out of the way, get some credits out of the way, and help us define what we wanted to do for our future. For me, myself, I'm planning on going into meteorology. So it was really, really important for me to be able to go straight from high school just to a smaller campus and kind of figure that out. So that was really important for me.
Thank you. Looks like you've got the green board figured out with your gestures, so.
My name is Brody Smith, as you probably saw up there. First of all, I want to thank you guys for letting us speak on behalf of the campus. I'm just going to talk about my personal experience as the campus. So first of all, like was stated, I'm from Highland, Wisconsin, and Highland's population is 842 people. And the campus, or excuse me, the school itself is 200 kids, K through 12. So coming from a small school like that and going to Richland, it was a super easy transition for me. Having that like community feel where you know all the professors, all the teachers, and can almost build relationships with them where they can help you more than just in school. For me, I have a lot of people that when I go back to Highland, I talk to a lot of my teachers still. And coming here, it's no different. Whenever I see teachers just anywhere, it's the same feel. And so for me, coming from Highland, going to Richland Center, it's the same thing. Another thing is for affordability. For me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. And I really didn't want to leave home. I really wasn't ready to move on to the next chapter of my life fully. So I decided that this was a great place for me. I live in Highland, which is about a 30-minute drive from here. So I make that every day, and it's not too bad. And I don't know. That's really the whole thing. Is it's super easy to be there and live at your house, still be with your family, still have support from your family, be able to afford it, and not only that, still have a unique college experience as well, and not having to make the full commitment of moving away and having to start over completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Your chance.
Hi, my name is Emily Lund, and I'm a sophomore at the campus. And I also wanted to state, please keep this in mind, I'm a female first-generation farmer. I did not grow up in agriculture at all, but August 5th, 2021, I packed up my cow, as you saw in the presentation before. Her name's Fish Stick. I packed her up in a trailer, and I grabbed my dog and a couple clothes, and I moved here to Richland Center specifically to come to this campus. Okay, I did not grow up in agriculture at all. I bought her when I was 15 with a couple $100s of babysitting cash, and I brought her with me to start this crazy adventure of farming. So because of this campus, I've been able to start taking classes in the agriculture field and get a feel for it before I moved to main campus completely. And Mr. McGuire, when I addressed your question from yesterday, you asked, what do we have to lose? And for everybody else, there's a lot more than just us sitting here. I mean, you're going to lose an entire future of students that can attend this campus and get the same start that I did. Everyone wants to recognize medical professionals, and they are amazing people. I'm not trying to discount them, but no one ever recognizes the farmers. Because if you guys ate today, those farmers were people that fed you. And not everyone grows up in a farming family. And for me, I always want to do my part and become a farmer because I feel that's how I can serve the people around me. And without this college, I would not have been able to start farming. So because of this campus, it's giving geographic accessibility to these farm kids in the area who do not have a college within reason that they can stay at home and continue to farm and then also go to school. I do this farming operation 100% by myself. My dad comes and visits on weekends and helps wire power my barn. But honestly, I was almost late today because I was negotiating a steer back through the fence before I came here. Okay, I mean, I do this by myself. And without this college here, I would not have been able to learn half the things I'm going to do. Last year, I had a bottle calf that would not get rid of scours, and I couldn't figure out why. So I brought a poop sample to my biology lab in the morning, and my teacher actually doubled as a veterinarian in Bangladesh before he came to the United States. And so we sat there for half an hour, and he told me how to run a fecal sample under the microscope. And without this campus, I would not have that opportunity, and that steer would not be going to market next week as a 1,200-pound Holstein steer. So I want to address your question, is that it's not just us sitting here today that are losing out on this campus. It's not everyone else in the county who's losing on the campus. It's everyone who's not going to have an opportunity to affordable, accessible education in their future. So
Thank you.
please take that into mind.
Thanks. Anyone else? No? Yes, Danielle Rudersdorf.
Hi, my name is Danielle Rudersdorf. I was born and raised here in Richland Center. I went to the high school here. And I did my first semester here at UW Richland. And because of UW Richland, that was the only way I was going to be able to get into a bachelor's program. I applied for every bachelor program there, or for every four-year college there was, and was not able to get into any of those colleges. So the only way to do that was to transfer from a two-year. So take that into mind as well. How many students are going to leave our high school their senior year and go straight to a four-year college? Another thing I wanted to say is I wasn't able to complete my degree, and I only have 18 credits left just to get my associates, and life happened, and now I'm mom of 3 kids and lots of things going on. So the plan was wait a little longer, finish up those credits, and at least get my associates. But it seems like now that might not be a possibility. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Board. I'll recognize Mr. Turk first. He was before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to share a couple thoughts here on stuff we're talking about tonight. I don't dispute any of the advantages we've talked about. I went to UW Richland for a year, had a wonderful experience, been in multiple productions at UW Richland. Don't deny the value of it at all. But we need to be careful about our perspective because we're biased. And suggestions that we make to the UW system make wonderful sense to us and may even be based on flawless logic. However, keep in mind, what we're asking a UW system that's already said they're going to close our campus to do is give us $4 million. Oh, and we want local control of spending that. Not that that's inappropriate for us to ask, but just keep in mind the perspective from the people who are asking it. How likely is that to succeed? We will see. The statement about they say they've been pouring in money. Well, they've actually been cutting. Depending on your perspective, both could be true. If you look at a per student funding level, when it was at its peak in 2012, it was about $77.50 a student. If you look at this year's statistics, it's over $21,800 per student. Depending on your perspective, both statements could be true. Yeah, they cut the total allocation dramatically. I just think we need to be cautious about the perspectives and keep those in mind of who we're addressing and who we're asking them. Thank you.
Mr. McGuire, please use the mic.
Sean, I just wanted some clarification. You said 84% drop. Okay, is that a one-year drop or is there an average over a period of time? What does that 84% represent in numbers, actual numbers?
Mr. Chair, that was, if I can answer this question,
Yes, please do.
that was a 10-year drop. So that would have been from, it would be on page 8, 37 in that presentation. So that would be from 20, I believe the calculation was 2012 through 2021. So 373 down to 58.
Okay, that's the 84%. Okay, I didn't know if that was 1 year or several years or, okay. I have a question. I've only been on this committee a few months, okay? My children all went to UW Richland except for one, and he went to MATC in Madison. So anyway, my question is, what's the average, if you had 100 high school seniors, is there an average somewhere that says how many children, numerically speaking, out of 100 high school seniors go to college? Is there a number out there somewhere? Can someone answer that question, buddy?
Can't answer it. I don't have the data, Daniel.
Okay, well then I just recently was told that there's from Richland Center High School, there are no students going to Richland campus. Is that true? Okay, are there more, or is there just? Okay, so that was not true. So I'm not embarrassed to ask that publicly because someone mentioned that to me. Obviously, someone that probably doesn't care about the college. Okay, they're looking for something negative. So there is a healthy response from the children of Richland Center school system to go on to Richland campus. Is that true? Would you consider that to be accurate? Okay, all right. That's important. I feel that we can't. If we're in a debate on what to do, what's appropriate, what makes sense, I think the first thing would have to happen is that we would have to show some sort of participation and support from the children of Richland Center. Do you think it'd be a reasonable summation of? Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you so much. Sir, yeah.
Yeah, so I do agree with that, but you also, I think, have to consider the freshmen who are there now who could continue as sophomores. Because it's 2 years. So like Autumn is freshman right now, Brandon's freshman, Cody freshman, Isaiah freshman, and then several students we have right now would continue to be sophomores. So the high schools are important. We do have a freshman base that would be returning as well.
Oh, and we have to include Eagle, correct? They're Richland Center kids, so,
Yes.
and is there good participation from Eagle also?
Bob Frank, did you wish to comment on that?
Yeah, I would like to comment. I think in response to that, it's not just Richland Center High School, it's not just Eagle High School, it's all the high schools in the area.
Yeah.
And it's a lack of the recruiters and having those contacts, going out to those schools and saying, hey, we are UW Richland campus, come here. Those things haven't been gone to the schools, they haven't been going to either the private or the public schools. It hasn't been promoted, and so whatever school you're talking about, I don't think it matters, because the draw is there, but we're not drawing. The recruiting has not been happening.
Okay, I have one more if I can, and then I'll turn the microphone to someone else.
I'll let you ask one more. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dan.
I'd like someone to make me understand why we have this tremendous problem with getting these children signed up to go to school, or why is there's a conflict between they have to be signed up through UW-Platteville, and then UW-Platteville is saying, why don't you just send them all here? I don't understand all. Can't we sign up, enroll these children right here in Richland Center? Isn't that possible?
Sean, can you answer that from your research?
I can answer that. When it was restructured, it was not possible. We had, all the staff was removed from the campus and all the records were removed, and you had to only apply through Platteville. And you did apply through Platteville, it was very hard to find out how to go to Richland. So that was the restructuring. Can I add one thing?
Sure.
It's sort of semantics probably for people. The directive from Mr. Rothman does say develop a plan that creates an ongoing presence here. And we are waiting to work on that plan. And we went to the Regents meeting last week. It is a little bit hard to understand, but I did talk to the president, Karen Walsh, of the Board of Regents. And she stated directly when I said, who made the decision, she explained it. And I said, well, how is it closed? She said, the Richland campus is not closed. Her exact words. I believe Sean was standing near me. I said, okay. She said, no, it's not closed. You should not be using that term. We are working on a plan, and you have to deal with that. So it's just maybe semantics for some, but we're supposed to stop saying, she even said, quit saying that. So I'm just letting you know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, but you got to use the mic, Judge Sharp.
Yes. Well, sitting here listening to this, I guess I do have one comment that I want to impart. And that starts with a question. What is the hardest thing to convince a judge of? The hardest thing to convince a judge of is that they were wrong. They've made this decision, and now we've got to convince them they were wrong. How do you do that? You don't start out by name calling and blaming and things like that. Because if you do that and I'm the judge, you're going to lose me right away. You've got to be positive. You've got to do, and I'm echoing what Turk is saying, we have got to think of a way to convince them that it would be better to keep the campus open than to close it. When I was judge, I read the papers for a case before I hear the arguments from the attorneys, Mr. Wyndham. And oftentimes I kind of know which way I'm going to decide before the attorneys start talking. I've kind of made my mind up. But then they start talking and I start hearing about things that I didn't know about, things that I didn't realize, things that I had never considered before. And lo and behold, at the end of the hearing, I make the opposite ruling of what I thought I was going to make. And that's what we've got to do here. We've got to find a way forward. And the main thing is we've got to convince them that we can bring students back to the campus. That's the key. That's the whole key here. That's what they want. That's got to be our plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manning?
Yes, I have some questions to make sure I understand the referendum.
So I'm
Number
going
one,
to direct the questions to Linda or Sean.
so we talked about the cropland. Are you talking about selling that to keep the campus going longer?
Let's see, I think Supervisor Manning, the language, let's see, I should not be looking at the presentation. I should be looking at the resolution was drafted. I think there's a be it further resolved section. Yeah, it's on the bottom of page 3. It says, be it further resolved, a portion of the farmland shall be removed from the memorandum of agreement for an environmentally sensitive housing development with property tax proceeds dedicated to the ongoing upkeep and maintenance of the UW Richland campus. So I think it was, the way it's currently worded is vague. It does not specify that, but the difference is previously there was never any agreement to remove that farmland for housing development. So I think that's what's new about this compared to 2 years ago when it was being debated.
So if it's sold, where would the benefits go to? Would it go to the general budget, or where would the money go if you sold a section of land?
Yeah, the proceeds would go to the county, the general fund. What the resolution talks about is using, set aside almost like a tax incremental district, setting aside the tax proceeds to be used toward betterment of the university, or sustaining the university. But that isn't what you're asking. You're asking selling the property, and if we sold it, where would the money go?
I don't think we're presuming through this statement that it would be sold necessarily. I think the idea is to develop the land so that there are buildings that would be generating property tax, and then that property tax would be put toward the campus maintenance.
The other question I got is the decline we've got from the state, is that due to the decline of students we have? Is that kind of how it works? The less students, the less tax aid you get?
I don't.
Some of the reason we're not getting as much?
I don't have all the, I moved here in 2014, Mr. Manning, so I don't know all the history like some people like Supervisor Gentis know, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around this. It's really hard to see and understand that. We hear that. We're being told we're giving you less money because you got less students. So it sounds reasonable, right? So like, oh, they're being fiscally wise. But then the other thing happening behind the scenes, they're taking all the staff that we're bringing in the students. So it's kind of almost a little clever how they're putting it out to us. Oh, well, you got less students, and they start ticking off the reasons. Lesser school enrollment, COVID, declining population in your area. But how would we see that big of a drop? I think that's the big question. And I don't know if, Mr. Chair, I can just respond to Mr. Turk and Judge Sharp. I'm personally very open to how to approach this in a way that is positive with the regions, in a way that would do that. If there are suggestions for how to amend the resolution to do that, I think that's great. I think what's challenging in my mind has been, how do you get past this recruitment issue we've been having and all these stories that are coming out of the community? I get the sense when we were there last week with the students, he just had no idea that this was happening. It's kind of, his mind was already made up. Didn't know that this dynamic was happening with Platteville. It's a little hard to believe at first, and I didn't believe it at first. It's just the continued stories, and now people coming out of the woodwork. So very open.
My last question is.
Gary, I'm just going to respond quickly, though. You talked about school aid, I think, and certainly there is school aid for up to the high school level. I don't know how it works when you get up into the college level. I don't think, it's direct aid, I guess, direct financing of the university. So when we talk about getting so much per student and building a tax base and building houses and then increasing school aid, what we're talking about are those 12 and under, 12th grade and under students.
My last concern is that if hiring a recruiter, as long as the campus has been here, I just have a hard time wrapping my brain around the fact that everybody knows about it. Why would a recruiter have to recruit students to a campus that's so well known?
I'll answer that. We may all be somewhat older, but your advisors and your students in school and even their parents are a lot younger. And before we had a student services person, John Poole, who was out in all the schools of a huge area, way bigger than Richland County. But I have contacted many of the counselors now that I find out, and they are very young and they didn't even know about Richland. So it is something that has to be constantly done because there's turnover in schools and they don't really have that affiliation because they don't know. So, you know, life changes, just like we all think we know about it. But if you're from Boston or wherever, you may not know about it if you've just been hired and you came from Minneapolis or somewhere. So there's a lot of constant marketing strategy and things that always needs to be done, just like we're trying to work on economic development. You know, obviously the campus was a big economic development for this county, and it takes time and effort and strategy and marketing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frank.
Thank you. And I'd like to follow up on that, the recruiting question. The recruiters, do people know the buildings there? Yes. Do all of the students know what classes they want to take or should take to get into the agricultural field, to get into whatever fields you're interested in? Do they know those things? That's what the recruiter's for. As having 5 daughters and trying to go through the FAFSA process for funding, the recruiter was critical. They showed you how to get through the process, how to do it, what schools to go to, how to handle your funds, how to handle your finances, whether it was better to have the student on as an independent on the tax return or whether you are claiming them as a dependent on the tax return. All those things make a difference. And the recruiters go out and they talk to the students, they talk to the parents, they talk to the groups, and they say, here's how you do it to better and to improve yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Do we have any amendments to the resolution? I'm gonna quickly restate what we've got here before us. Be it resolved that the county implore the UW system to return to a full-time recruiter. Be it resolved, submit a budget request for $4 million. Be it resolved, a request an outside professional mediator. Is that part of the? Okay, I didn't know if I had the draft or the final. Be it resolved, a portion of the farmland shall be removed from the MOA. And be it resolved that the county should work with UW system to develop a mutual benefit level of student enrollment and have clear annual targets, have targets, and those are the things that are salient issues of this resolution. Now, did anyone care to offer amendments to any of those things? Mr. Renish.
Yes, on the fourth, be it resolved as far as the land. I would like it to read, a portion of the farmland shall be removed from the MOA for an environmentally sensitive housing development, period. Because I can't vote for spending future tax proceeds on anything. We don't know what the future holds.
Are you offering that as an amendment?
Yes.
Okay, Renish, second by Turk. And so basically, it's the be it further resolved, portion of the farmland with property, okay. Ends right there, sensitive housing development, period. So it doesn't doesn't speak to property tax proceeds or anything else.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to explain why I'm supporting that, I would want to see the maximum flexibility with any new operational revenue preserved for the county. Certainly appreciate the sentiment of wanting to find a way to provide support, but I would like to see the county have the flexibility to address that through multiple means, not just tying up this particular piece of revenue.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I'll speak against the amendment. So I'm on the referendum committee right now. We have been looking for ways to increase revenues to the county so that we can reduce the potential amount of a referendum. All the departments, all the committees have been tasked with that. This is a solution coming from the education committee to cover the costs that are currently in the operational levy. So later in the meeting, there'll be a presentation. Actually, you're going to get a survey, and it shows that the amount of the operating levy that goes to UW Richland right now is a voluntary reduction, in part because of this. There's other stuff in the works as well, but without this, that statement that you all would like to take out of the amendment, we can't cover our costs. It's meant to be a revenue generating thing for the county, just like we're asking Pine Valley to increase their profits so we can pull that to the operational levy. So we're trying to be fiscally prudent here.
Okay, we've been at this almost 2 hours now, so I'm gonna ask for, I guess, a roll call on the amendment. And an aye would be removing the language, a nay would be keeping it as it's written. Mr. Kalish, would you please call the roll?
Williamson,
Yes.
Cooey, Fleming,
Yes.
Voice, McGuire,
Mr. McGuire?
Carroll,
No.
Murphy Lopez,
No.
Brewer,
Yes.
Seep, McKee,
No.
Renish,
Yes.
Luck, Manning, Batchel,
Yes.
Glassburner,
No.
Rudersdorf, Gentis,
No.
Turk,
Yes.
Cosgrove, Frank,
No.
and are we waiting for Danielle to come back?
What is our count right now,
We
sir?
have 1, 2, 3, 9 yes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no.
Mrs. Rudersdorf, we're waiting for your vote. Do you know what we're voting on? The amendment? We're voting on the amendment. And a yes vote means we remove language that says that the money will be set aside for the campus. A no vote means no, it goes into the general fund, basically. A yes? Okay.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yes, and then 7 no.
Okay, so the yeses prevail. So we have an amendment to the general resolution. Anything else? All right, I'm going to now call a roll call vote on the amended resolution. Mr. Kalish.
Okay, so we're voting,
Yes, yes is in favor of all the resolution with the amendment, I'm sorry, and a no.
okay, so I'll start with Williamson. Cooey,
Yes.
Fleming, what, Cooey, were you there?
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Voice, McGuire, Carroll,
Yes.
Murphy Lopez,
Yes.
Brewer,
Yes.
Seep, McKee,
Yes.
Renish, Luck, Manning, Gotcho, Glassburner,
Yes.
Rudersdorf, Gentis,
Yes.
Turk, Cosgrove, Frank,
Yes.
and carries out, so motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, guys, for being here. Did I teach you driver's ed? I thought I did. I thought I did. Okay, and we'll move on to, we talked about taking Mr. Moylan's audit report. Are we queued up for that, Mr. Langrick?
Mr. Chair, is it possible to take the agenda item related to the campus, though? You have another one before we will.
Let's not. Let Moylan on the phone. Don't we, Clint, is Moylan, Mr. Moylan on the phone?
He's remotely, yes.
I'm here, yes, but you can follow the agenda items, that's fine.
Okay, I can pull up. So yes, we have Mr. Moylan, Bill Moylan is joining us here, and I'm pulling up his presentation on here. Bill, if you can help cue me in to make sure I'm following on your slides.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here tonight to, everybody can hear me well enough? Sound check.
We can hear, can you hear in the back? I can hear you up front here. No, no. Not very good.
Okay, I'll try to lean toward my laptop here.
There, that's
There you
much
go.
better, Bill, much better.
Okay, that's better. Okay, good. I'm here to present financial statements that were issued previously and submitted for you. We'll kind of follow through this presentation handout that we typically use. You can go to page 2 there, Clint.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So we completed our audit and we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the desired opinion that states we believe the financial statements are free from material misstatements. The scope of our audit includes all funds and activities of the county. A separate audit exit conference and presentation is provided for the Pine Valley Community Village, the nursing home. A separate communications document is prepared as well as the bound audit financial statements. The communications document is provided specifically for county board and should be read in conjunction with the financial statements. We also prepared and submitted regulatory reporting for the county with the Department of Revenue with the annual financial report Form A. Next page, financial highlights. County's 2021 governmental funds total fund balance decreased by 26,000 during 2021. So countywide for the governmental funds, we were pretty close to break even. The general fund experienced an increase of fund balance of 1,900,000. We'll get to that here shortly. The general fund's total fund balance was just over 7 million at December 31st. And that represents about 5 months of expenses that are in reserves. Tax certificates, which are the largest receivable at the county, totaled 554,000 compared to 600,000 in the prior year. Countywide sales tax revenue was 1,491,000 compared to 1,296,000 in 2020. As a part of the audit, we do test compliance with state imposed property tax limits, which the county was in compliance with. There were no long-term debt issuances during 2021. The county made scheduled principal and interest payments. Pine Valley Community Village had an operating revenue of $8,434,000. They experienced an operating loss, however, of $1,050,000, which is offset by county property tax levy and supplemental payments from the federal government. Page 4 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balances for the governmental funds. The county reports two major funds, the general fund, which is a primary operating fund of the county, and debt service fund. The rest of the funds for the government are reported as non-major funds, reported in aggregate. Total revenues during 2021 were 21,510,000. Total revenues in the prior year were 18,034,000. Total expenses in 2021 were 21,536,000. And the prior year, there were 20,791,000. Other financing sources and uses, we didn't have much going on this year for as far as transfers or long-term debt issuances or insurance recoveries. So headed to zero this year. We started the year with fund balance of 8,281,000, and that increased just that decreased actually slightly to 8,254,000. The budgetary comparison for general fund is required supplemental information to the financial statements. General fund budgeted revenues of 17,368,000 and actual revenues were 19,851,000. So that's a favorable difference of almost 2.5 million. That breakout, the other taxes line is related to sales tax primarily, which was greater than what we anticipated for the budget. Intergovernmental revenues, which budgeted was 5.9 million and actual was 6.9 million. That difference is primarily related to CDBG grant that was awarded for some projects in Lone Rock, as well as increased human services COVID detection and other aids. The largest contributor to the difference in public charges for services, which had a favorable budget to actual difference of 784,000. That was primarily driven by Health and Human Services, community services, which had an increase in basically programming, which resulted in more revenues by about 800,000 and likewise more expenses by 800,000. Total budgeted expense was 16.9 million. Actual expense was 17.9 million. So that's an unfavorable difference of 964,000. And the two largest there for the difference are health and social services, which is primarily related to the increased level of programming for community comprehensive care services. And the conservation and development line is related to the Lone Rock project that was going and was financed by grants. So the unfavorable differences in expenses were financed by favorable differences in the revenue categories. So we budgeted for an increase of fund balance of 390,000 for general fund. And we experienced an increase of 1,900,000. So that's a favorable difference of about 1.5 million. The next page, governmental fund balances. The county reports 4 types of fund balance, going from most restricted at the top to least restrictive at the bottom. Non-spendable fund balance represented about 8% of total fund balance at 642,000, which is made up of tax certificates and deeds, inventories for materials and supplies, and prepayments. Restricted fund balance makes up about 14% of total fund balance at 1,190,000. These balances are set aside and required to be spent on specific projects. Assigned fund balance represents less than 1% of total at 32,000. And unassigned fund balance represents 78% of total fund balance. The general fund had unassigned fund balance of just under 6.4 million. And then there were two non-major funds that had deficit fund balances, which either will be getting a transfer from general fund or anticipated revenues from a future year to offset. Page 7, visual representation of the governmental funds revenue categories. 32% of revenue for the county comes from intergovernmental revenues, federal and state awards. 41% of revenue comes from tax levy. 23% comes from public charges for services, which is primarily general government charges, ambulance fees, UW meal services, sheriff's department fees, human service nutrition programming, and swimming pool revenues. Miscellaneous revenues and interest income makes up 3%. And then the last 1% is licenses and permits, penalties and forfeitures. The two most significant intergovernmental revenues that the county receives are shared taxes, which come primarily in November, about 90% or more, and health and human services, 2.1 million, which comes from on the state payments register through the Department of Administration, are paid monthly based on contract reimbursements. Property taxes over the period shown, local property taxes have increased significantly over the 6-year period, about 52% over time. On page 9, the tax receivable balance, which is the largest receivable that the county holds for tax levies that have not been yet collected, has been decreasing. To start the year, it was at 604,000. And then we charged the current year levy and we received collections, and current year year end at 12/31/2021 decreased to 554,000. The trend in equalized value of property been trending nicely upward over the period here shown. 28% over the period of past 8 years has been the increase in the county's valuation. And in sales tax revenue, the county utilizes the 0.5% sales tax to help with limitation of the property tax increases. And we saw a nice increase between 2020 and 2021, going from 1.2 million to almost 1.5 million. And to date in 2022, we're kind of trending slightly upward again. At this time in 2021, we had collected 1,112,000 of sales tax revenue. And at this time, currently for 2022, we've received 1,132,000. So those revenues are going to maintain that level of about 1.5 million or so by year end. Total government expenses, 42% of expense is health and social services related. 20% is public safety related. General government makes up 11% of total expense. Culture and rec is at 5%. 13% is at conservation and development costs. Debt service is 4%, and capital outlays make up 5% of total expense. And the statement of changes of net position for the proprietary funds, the county non-governmental funds. The proprietary funds are the Pine Valley Community Village and the internal service fund, the highway department. Total operating income or loss for the Pine Valley and highway. Pine Valley recorded an operating loss of $1,050,000, which was offset by supplemental payments from the federal government of $621,000 and general property taxes from the county of $1,138,000. So they started the year with net position of $2,168,000, and they ended the year with $3,044,000 in net position. For the highway department, operating revenues were $2.5 million. Operating expense, which includes depreciation costs, were $4.4 million. So that's an operating loss of $1.8 million. That loss is offset by property tax of $2.4 million. So total change in net position for the highway was $689,000, an increase. So net position went from 5.2 million to just over 5.9 million. And changes in long-term obligations. There were no new debt issues during the year. Just made anticipated scheduled payments. So for the governmental funds, we started the year with about 6.9 million in long-term debt outstanding. We made just under $1 million in principal payments, which left us with about 5.9 million outstanding at the end of the year. 940,000 is expected to be the principal payment here in 2022. Vested compensated absences, we started the year with 613,000, and that fluctuated down to 603,000 at 12/31. Bonds and notes payables for the business type activities. Pine Valley and the highway department had 18,920,000 outstanding in long-term debt to start the year. Made about $1 million worth of principal payments. That left us with 18,273,000 at the end of the year. The total GO debt limitation is a calculation based on the equalized value. Your total debt limit is 67,400,000, and debt subject to that limitation is 23,770,000. So there's 65% of capacity remaining for debt issuances. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Moyleen?
Bill, they all look pretty excited, just so we don't get the wrong impression. Everybody is.
We do have a question. We
I-
just needed a few seconds of interlude. Supervisor Renish.
Yeah, on the highway department, under revenues, where do we find the breakout for the wheel tax?
The wheel tax is included probably. I'd have to pull up what I have from the financial statement data, but it would be included in the charges services, I believe. So there's no revenue detail like you would see for governmental activities in the financial statements, but the wheel taxes are represented there.
Can you say that one more time, Bill? It kind of broke up a little bit.
Oh, sure. If you'd like to see wheel tax shown as a separate line item on the financial statements, we can do that. But we don't typically show like a breakout of the proprietary fund income statement.
And Mr.
The wheel taxes would be included in that charges for services line, I believe.
And Mr. Renish, do you know where the charges for services line is, or do you need some more? Okay. Okay, anyone else with questions for Mr. Moyleen? Okay, we're not hearing any, so thank you, Mr. There's no action that needs to be taken on this
There
tonight?
is no action. It has been received and filed.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on. Mr. Brewer just stepped out to just for a break, so we'll move on with the agenda here. I did ask him if we could discuss number 20 while some campus people were here. He assured me that he's planning on referring that to another committee. So we're just going to go ahead and go back to the top of the agenda here, where we left off after the minutes. We'll go to agenda item number 6, ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Kenyon Revocable Trust, Marty Kenyon, in the town of Buena Vista.
May I go ahead?
Clerk Kalish, go ahead.
This will be ordinance number 22-19, that the following described 2.1 acre parcel belonging to Kenyon Revocable Trust, Marty Kenyon, and in the town of Buena Vista is hereby rezoned from the general ag and forestry district to the single family residential district. This ordinance shall be effective on December 13th of 2022 and is being offered by the Land and Zoning Standing Committee on November 7th.
Okay, who would like to make a motion on this one?
I would.
Okay, motion by Gentis, second by Frank. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Bindle on this one? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, that motion passes. Agenda item number 7, ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Lyle and Christy Jelly in the town of Orion. Mr. Kalish.
This will be ordinance number 22-20, that the following described 2.42 acre parcel belonging to Lyle and Christy Jelly in the town of Orion is hereby rezoned from general ag and forestry district to the single family residential district. This ordinance shall be effective on December 13th and was offered by the Land and Zoning Standing Committee on November 28th.
You've heard the ordinance. What's your pleasure? Mr. Manning, seconded by Turk. Discussion, background? Mike? Anything?
Background on this petition is that the lot's being re-described and adding more land to it.
Okay. All those in favor of this ordinance signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Number 8, any petitions received since the last county board session and anything recommended for denial, Mike?
Petition by Audrey Oliver to rezone 2 acres from Ag Forestry to Residential 2, Section 12, Town of Orion. And there's a petition by Jeff and Pam Neagle to rezone 5 acres from Ag Residential back to Ag Forestry, Section 19, Town of Marshall.
Thank
Nothing
you.
for denial.
Thanks. Okay, Mike's been busy moving material all week. I caught him in the elevator day with a load of 2x4, so he's busy. Number 10, a resolution approving the Richland County Highway to purchase land for Ash Creek Church Septic. Gentlemen.
This will be resolution number 22-123. Be it further resolved that funds for this purchase were budgeted for in the highways 2022 budget. And once project is completed, the 0.50 acres of land will be deeded back to Ash Creek Church. This resolution is being offered to you by the Public Works Standing Committee on November 7th of 2022.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Reddish, seconded by Mrs. Rudersdorf. Do we need background on this, Josh? Sure we do.
Yeah, I'd probably use some explanation. So because of what we're talking about here tonight, this is directly attached to a county highway project. County highway in question is County Highway O. This project is about 0.8 to 0.9 of a mile long in total. And because we have to comply with federal standards, because there's federal dollars attached to this project, the septic that is now sitting on the right of way of County Road O is going to be affected by this project and has to be relocated. So land had to be found for the septic to be moved over to, and when the project's all done, the land would be deeded back to Ash Creek to suffice all federal and state standard.
Okay, thanks. Anyone have any questions of Josh? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 11, approve dissolution of resolution 2163 recommending masks in county-owned buildings. Mr. Kalish.
Okay, so 2163 was previously passed by members of the county board, members of the Health and Human Services Board back on May 18th of 2021. The dissolution of this resolution is being brought forward from the Health and Human Services Department. So I believe Ms. Clements is here to maybe speak on this resolution and the dissolution of it.
Tricia Clements, Director of HHS.
Yeah, we are asking that this resolution be dissolved. At this point in time, we're no longer strongly recommending that masks be worn in the buildings due to different COVID, precautions that are in place due to vaccinations, antibiotic treatments, antibody treatments, et cetera.
Thank you. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No, the resolution is adopted. Didn't I get a first and second? Oh, okay. Mrs. Glassman, seconded by Frank. Okay, now we have a motion before us. And I heard mostly yeses. Now I'm going to say the motion is adopted. All right. It's been a long night. Number 13. Or 12, resolution reclassifying positions in various departments. Mr. Whatever your name is over there.
Got it. Kalish.
Mr. Kalish, please.
This will be resolution number 22-124. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the above listed positions, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective the first pay period of 2023, which would actually start on December 18th, just to clarify that. This is being offered to you by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on 3 different dates, being October 4, November 14th, and December 6th.
Okay, you've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mrs. Rudersdorf. Mr. Langrick, can you shed some light on all this?
Mr. Chair, these reclassifications are in line with actions that were taken through Finance and Personnel in preparation of the budget. The different positions on here, going from top to bottom, the MIS Administrator was a reclassification up. The Adult Protective Services Social Worker was a reclassification up. Child and Youth Services Case Manager was a reclassification up. Mental Health Case Manager is a new position. Administrative Assistant is a title change. The Clinical Reimbursement Coordinator is a new position title. Resident Assistant is a reclassification down. Mental Health Therapist is a new position. Custodian is a new position added from a contractor. And then the Ambulance AEMT is assigned to a grade C. It was an asterisk grade, and that's to accommodate for the 7% increase, which was given to ambulance versus 5%, and then following on the same wage schedule, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Clear as mud, right? Okay. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 13, a resolution amending the policy of personnel classification, compensation, and staffing authorization. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 22-125. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors, the policy of personnel classification, compensation, and staffing authorization is hereby amended as recommended by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. And be it further resolved, the policy reflecting these changes shall be made available in the Richland County Administrator's Office and on the Richland County website. And notification of these changes shall be distributed to the organization by the policy custodian, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective December 18th of 2022, which is the beginning of the first pay period in 2023. This is being offered to you by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on November 14th and December 6th.
You've heard the resolution. Much pleasure. Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Gotchel. Do we need a explanation, Mr. Langren?
How much of an explanation would you like, sir? Let me do a quick one, and if there's no questions. Page 5. All right. Let me just hit my notes here. In fact, I won't even mess around with the thing here. It's in your file. You can check on it. It's underneath item number 13A. But page 5, you're going to see some language there that is reservation of authorities that are put in here. It's delegating Finance and Personnel Standing Committee to move with the policy, but still specifies some reservations of authorities that still have to be taken back here to the county board. On page 6, you're seeing some cleanup language that has to do with the placement of folks and how they progress through the schedule, because we did a CPI increase. We shifted where people are starting from steps and where they can go up to. So this is kind of cleanup in conjunctions with that cost of living increase, as well as then cleaning out some historic language of when we had transitioned from resolution language into a policy language. On page 7 on the top, you're seeing an accommodation again for a 7% increase for the ambulance emergency medical technician positions. On the bottom of that, you're seeing 2 changes, one with a delegation to the administrator regarding authorization to retain services with Carlson Detman for your reviews on reclassifications or for new positions. The next section below that, paragraph 4, you're seeing reservation of the county board for the authority regarding your increases impacting your wage schedule. Moving into page 8, on the top of that, we're doing some cleanup. We had some language there that reserved appendice types of elements, but we're not utilizing all those, so we're going to strip them out of there for clarification. Changes in the bottom of page 8, section 6, paragraph 4. We're rechanging some of our definitions in regards to full-time equivalencies and part-time unbenefited, et cetera. And this is to be more consistent with the Affordable Care Act languages that we try to govern over and how we offer folks certain benefits. We still good, Mr. Chair?
Well, do you have more?
Unfortunately, yes.
All right.
Page 9, we have some cleanup. Page number 9 on the bottom, though, you're seeing some delegation of reclassifications authorities to finance and personnel where they're charged with executing those. On page 11, we have reservation of authorities, though, in the realm of adding or taking away positions on your authorization tables. And then that one, I think, Mr. Chair, is kind of the last big piece out there. Then you'll see in the back your authorization tables and wage schedules then reflect the changes of the reclassifications that were brought forward tonight and changes made through previous actions by finance and personnel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You've heard the resolution and the explanation. We have a motion before us. All those in favor of this motion, this resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the resolution is adopted. Number 14, a resolution recalling CDBG funds and dissolving CDBG committee. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 22-126. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that the CDBG funds in the amount of $74,553.63 are hereby recalled by Richland County with intentions to use these funds in continuing county support of Richland economic development with prioritization on housing. Be it further resolved that these funds should be returned through the Richland County Treasurer by no later than January 31st of 2023. And be it further resolved that his recall shall include any interest in properties which may have been serviced by or are indebted to the program. And be it further resolved that the CDBG committee functions, the Housing Authority Committee, paragraph C of the committee structure document are stricken. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on November 14th.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Carroll? Seconded by Mrs. Fleming. This is a good thing. Mr. Langren, you want to, one comment?
Yes, I can quickly. So the gist of this is you do have funds that sit in the CDBG program. It's kind of defunct. It's kind of outlived its phase. So these federal dollars that are out there amounting to $87,710.15 as of August 31st are kind of sitting there, not being utilized or saying underutilized to the very extent. It is being requested then through you folks to bring back 74,000 and change of that and leaving $13,000 with the Housing Authority. Purpose for that is to cover kind of the secretarial and the staffing things that they've done for us over the many years. If we're ever audited by the federal government without having some type of funds showing that it went towards support of CDBG, that would be coming out of Section 8 funds. So that's why we're asking for 74 back and leaving 13 with them. The intent of this is went through the budget process and just kind of described was to bring those funds back into the general fund, but visualizing that as continuing our economic development support with partnership with the city, and then tasking the director there that's saying, you know, we've brought back in federal dollars that were intended for housing types of efforts. we would like to kind of reprioritize those and again, finding and helping us solve our housing problems throughout the county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep, thank you. And this is a good use of those funds. So all those in favor of, yes, Ms. Gentis.
Um, this may not be a popular amendment, but first of all, I had originally thought that the spirit of these funds should be for lower income housing. So I'm going to read an amendment and then I might make another amendment. I would like it to be in the general fund and not go directly to, although I think they could work with this Richland Economic Development. So now therefore be it resolved by Richland County Board of Supervisors that the CDBG funds in the amount of $74,553.63 are hereby recalled by Richland County with intentions to use these funds in support of developing housing development on the land of UW Richland with property tax proceeds dedicated to the ongoing upkeep and maintenance of the Richland campus or to be used directly to lower income housing.
Okay, what's your second amendment? Let me hear that first.
Well, the second amendment
Vote on this
could
one.
be, the CBG funds are hereby to be directed to just lower income housing. Because I think that was the spirit of the money.
Right, so your first one says lower income housing and the
And-
campus, basically, right? Okay, so she's offering this amendment. Do I have a second to her amendment? Mrs. Ruderstorm? Okay. We'll vote on the amendment then as offered by Ms. Gentis to basically earmark CDBG money to be used for low-income housing campus, not just
No, or,
for, right, for,
or,
I'm sorry. And/or, can we put an and/or in there?
yeah.
Okay, I like and/or.
That's-
Okay. All those in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to this amendment signify by saying nay. Nay. So we'll have to take roll call on this. And aye favors the amendment, a nay does not.
Okay. So we'll start with Cooey,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Voice, McGuire, Carroll, Murphy Lopez,
Aye.
Brewer,
No.
Seep, McKee,
Aye.
Renish, Luck, Manning, Gotcho, Glassburner, Rudersdorf, Gentis, Turk, Cosgrove, Frank,
No.
Severson, and Williamson.
No.
Okay, the motion does not pass.
Carrie
Motion.
is online. Give him a chance, but he's online.
Who's online?
Carrie is.
Oh, I didn't know he joined. Severson
Carrie.
or Carrie? You're both?
Carrie Severson, are you online?
He's muted, so.
Well, how does the vote look right now?
Seven yes, and then 11 no.
So his vote won't make
It's not
any
gonna matter.
difference.
So 11 no, 7 yes. The motion does not pass.
Motion is defeated. Now, you had a second amendment?
Yeah. Okay, Linda, sorry to interrupt, but will you just, I want to make sure I know what we're saying no to this time because I thought it was one motion. So will you at least provide me with a copy of that? So, okay, or someone.
No, the chair thought that your first motion was housing and/or the college. The second amendment that you wish to offer is simply for low-income housing. Yeah. Okay, the amendment is offered to give the low-income, money to low-income housing, steer it toward low-income housing.
Okay, now therefore be it resolved by Richland County Board that the CDBG funds in the amount of 74,553.63 are hereby recalled by Richland County with intentions to use these funds in support of developing lower income housing in the county.
Okay, you're offering that as an amendment?
Yes.
Do you have a second? Mrs. Boyce. Okay. So I'm going to attempt to clarify this a little bit more. Instead of using the money broadly for economic development, the suggestion, the amendment is made to steer the money specifically toward low-income housing. Okay? So a vote in the affirmative will alter the original motion with this amendment. And I think we'll have to take roll again on this, please, Mr. Kalish.
Yep, 1 second. Okay, Fleming. Voice.
Yes.
McGuire. Carroll. Murphy Lopez.
No.
Brewer.
No.
Seep. McKee.
Yes.
Renish. Luck. Manning. Gotcho. Glassburner. Rudersdorf. Gentis. Turk. Cosgrove. Frank.
No.
Severson. Williamson.
No.
Hui.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, motion fails.
The motion to amend did not pass.
Yes, you had.
Therefore, we have the original motion before us, the original motion for resolution. Are you ready to vote on that? If so, I'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor of recalling the CDBG funds and directing it toward economic development, dissolving the CDBG committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the resolution is adopted. Number 15, a resolution authorizing the issuance of a request for proposals to update the county's comprehensive plan. Mr. Kalish.
All right, this will be resolution number 22-127. Now therefore be it resolved, the Rules and Strategic Planning Committee is authorized to issue an RFP for a comprehensive plan update, and be it further resolved that the Rules and Strategic Planning Committee shall return to the county board to request approval for vendor selection. This is being brought to you by the Rules and Strategic Planning Standing Committee on December 1st of 2022.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Ms. Fleming, Mr. Frank, seconds. Sean, give us some.
Mr. Chair,
insight.
yeah, so the Rules and Strategic Planning Committee has been working on this for a few months. It's one of the items in our strategic plan to finish a comprehensive plan. Our strategic plan is short term, like 2 to 4 years. This comprehensive plan is meant to be longer term, like 10 to 20 years. It's required by law that we update it every 10 years. We're behind by about 6 years in that requirement.
Thank you. So it's required by law. We're supposed to do it. We haven't done it. Now we're getting around to it. And we need some funds authorization to put out an RFP. So ready to vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 16, a resolution to adopt the updated Richland County Emergency Response Plan. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 22-128. Now therefore be it resolved that the Richland County Board of Supervisors hereby adopts the updated Richland County All Emergency Response Plan as an official plan, and be it further resolved that the Richland County Emergency Management Director will submit the plan to Wisconsin Emergency Management and distribute control copies to the appropriate county agencies. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Public Safety Standing Committee on December 2nd.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Manning, seconded by Mr. Kirk. Somebody want to tell me what we're doing? No? Pretty straightforward.
Chairman
Mr.
Brewer, this is Darren. I'm available for.
Yes,
questions.
Darren, please.
So Richland County has an emergency response plan or an emergency operations plan. They've had it since going back to the 60s. Over the course of time, particularly after September 11th, the Federal Emergency Management Agency and Wisconsin Emergency Management did a complete overhaul of their plan and went from an annex-based, which was driven by departments, to more of an emergency support function basis of a plan, which outlines how a county will, or how the state will, and then subsequently us as Richland County will support local units of government when there's disasters declared. This undertaking started about 2 years ago, and the plan is now updated and mirrors both FEMA and Wisconsin Emergency Management's plan.
Thank you. All those in favor of this resolution to adopt the emergency response plan signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 17, a resolution authorizing the Richland County Ambulance Service to apply for and accept a grant of state funds. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 22-129. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the ambulance department to apply for and accept a grant to state funds from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services in the amount of $22,260, with this grant being used to pay toward the salaries of 2 new part-time EMTs, which were budgeted. Be it further resolved that the Director of Ambulance Services hereby authorized to sign on behalf of the county such documents as are necessary to carry out the resolution. Be it further resolved that approval is hereby granted for the grant funds to be spent in accordance with the terms of the grant. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the county board members of the Joint Ambulance Committee on November 30th.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Reddish, seconded by Mr. Cosgrove. And I think this is a pretty good one for getting money. Mr. Manning? Now, the question is it matching? And I can't answer that. Can you, Darren?
No, this is not matching funds. Governor Evers set aside money for all ambulance departments, both first responders who don't transport patients and ambulance services that do, that are publicly owned. And Richland County was awarded the $22,260 to go towards the payroll expense.
Great. Thank you. I'm all for it. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 18, the resolution approving the purchase of EMC Unit 380 XT Hybrid DPE from Jacob Technologies for the amount of $38,953.66. Mr. Kalish.
All right, this will be resolution number 22-130. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the purchase of EMC Unity 380 XT Hybrid DPE from JCOM Technologies at a cost of $38,953.66. Be it further resolved that the funds to carry out this resolution shall come from Fund 92, and approval is hereby granted for the MIS Director to sign the purchase agreement for these items. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon its passage and publication, and is being offered to you by the Public Works Standing Committee on November 7th.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Frank, seconded by Mr. Williamson. Barb, you want to tell us what we're doing here? No?
This will increase the storage capacity for the county. We have found that with the increase in video and image storage, our storage capacity has dwindled to basically unsafe levels, and we need to increase that, make sure we're meeting all the requirements of data retention.
Hey, Barb. Thank you. Question?
Question. Was there an RFP or what was the pricing process of getting this price?
This is an add-on to our current one, so we went to the vendor who supplied the current system just to add another storage onto it.
Mr. Frank?
How much storage is being added? You know?
43? It's in the resolution. I think it's 43 or 34. I'm really sorry. Let me pull up here. It's either 34 or 43 terabytes, but I can't remember.
34 terabytes.
Okay.
All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Number 19, we've handled. Number 20, as the chairman, and I believe Sean mentioned this, I'm going to refer this matter to rules and resolutions. And we'll see something on it later. Number 21, appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees. Administrator Langreich.
Mr. Chair, this evening I'm recommending the removal of Edie Arneson from her current appointment with the CCS Coordination Committee. Concerns were raised with conflict of interest based on her position of employment, determined that a removal of service committee is in the best interest of the organization. This action comes forward with support from the Health and Human Services Board, which convened and also took action to recommend this action. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did you have an appointment to replace that person? Or?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, removal for the HHS board. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Sean, we're going to get to you in just a second. Clint, do you have anything under the administrator's report?
I do not tonight, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Turn it over to Sean Murphy Lopez. I know that he and his ad hoc committee have been meeting bi-weekly, I think, and they've done a lot of work, and he wants to talk to us about it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we would like to survey the county board tonight. These are the members of the committee. We've got the mayor and the school board present on our committee as well. The duties of the committee, they came to us from the county board this summer. It's to develop a referendum question regarding exceeding property tax levy limits, developing cost estimates for those, developing a public education plan, recommending the timing of a ballot question or questions, and recommending outcomes if the referendum fails. So work completed so far. We issued a press release on September 10th. We have a public education report. It's also in your folder. It's 22B referendum report, in case you'd like to look at that report. It's within it got an investigation of the county budget, frequently asked questions, and why we have this problem. We've also done a lot of correspondence with 8 committees and 2 boards, and we've done 9 meetings since July 28th, so almost bi-weekly. So the budget investigation, I'm just going to hit some high points of the report, but if you want to read this more in depth as you're taking the survey, or if you have any questions, happy to answer them. We've done big picture investigation. So our budget in 2022, current year adopted, we had 36 million in expenses. For revenues, 10.5 million came from the property tax levy, and 26 million came from other revenues. We also looked at the number of employees we have. We have approximately 280 staff authorized by the county board. Most of those are at Pine Valley Health and Human Services, 85 and 75 respectively. And these numbers are just a bit dated now based on the action that was taken earlier with the authorization table in the employee handbook, I believe. The sheriff's department has 33, highway department has 30, and then there are a lot of smaller departments. We also looked at revenues and expenses by department. So like if you look at all the way to the right side of this chart here, it's the sheriff's department. They have a shorter red bar and a very tiny little green one down below. They have few revenues to offset their expenses. Whereas the next one to the left, Health and Human Services, has a lot of expenses, but it also has a lot of revenues. So that's what that chart explains. This chart then subtracts the revenues from the expenditures and shows what the total expenses are that are going on the property tax levy by department. And then we also show here the property tax levy history, what's happened in the past 10 years. Blue is the operating levy. That's the one where we're looking at going to referendum for. Orange is the debt levy on top. Frequently asked questions. There are 6 categories. We aren't going to go through all 6 categories here. I'm just mentioning these because they're in the report in case you want to look at common questions about Health and Human Services, Pine Valley, state shared revenue, highway, UW Richland campus. But the debt one we have highlighted here. This chart shows what our annual debt payments have been since 2014 and what we've currently already committed through 2036. So you can see how in the current upcoming year, 2023, we have $3.8 million in debt payments scheduled. That number stays steady to slightly dropping as we start paying off a few things. This includes the radio tower projection from May of 2022, but that will change, of course, because interest rates have gone up. It still also includes the annual short-term borrowing of $1.05 million a year. Another frequently asked question that a lot of folks have had is wage comparisons. How do we compare for hourly wages compared to some peer counties? So in this chart on the right, these are 6 select positions at the county. Richland County is shown in yellow. The other counties are shown in blue. We're typically one of the lower paid. Then the last one, staffing level comparisons. We have a staffing level comparison by department in Richland County compared to Bayfield County, Burnett, Kewanee, Iowa, Grant, and Sauk. So in case you're interested, how do we compare in the Sheriff's Department or Health and Human Services or whatever department you're interested in, you can look and you can see how we compare to those other counties. So why are we doing this now? Mr. Langrick was so kind as to complete a 5-year financial plan for us. It's kind of making us do some homework here. Forecast our needs from 2023 to 2027. The federal ARPA funding runs out next year. 2 years from now. The number one added expense we have is wage increases. That's shown in the chart. It's the left-hand red bar within the green box. The number 2 added expense is rising health insurance premiums. So if anyone ever asks you, why are you doing this? What's going on? This chart is probably your go-to chart.
Sean.
Yeah. Mr. Carroll's on the referendum committee. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Steve Carroll. Yeah, I want to add one more thing. This is kind of like a highlights from our report, but if you would want to go to our full report to page 11, there's another thing I want to make sure everybody knows about, and that is the decline in state shared revenues. And we've got a chart there showing that not only has it declined, but if you look at the impact of inflation, if they just held steady, we would be getting substantially more state shared revenues now. In fact, accumulation in the last 8 or 10 years is like $8 or $9 million over that period of time. And I just want to I'm not sure who all already knows that, but I wanted to point that out. That it's not like we lost money or did something wrong. There's a lot of things going into this, but that is a key one right there.
Thank you, Steve.
Pages 11 and 12. So the chart he was mentioning about what we've lost over the past 20 years, that's shown on page 12. 9.8 million cumulatively in 20 years from the state. Okay. Let's see. So back in August, the county board passed a series of resolutions. They identified reductions to the property tax levy by 2027 for the different committees and boards that are responsible for county operations. So on the left-hand side, you've got the Sheriff's Department, Public Safety Committee that includes the Sheriff's Department and several other courthouse departments. On the right-hand side, you have the fair. So you can see how they're all relative to each other. If you look at the key at the very bottom, orange says voluntary reductions by 2027. So that means that committee said, I'll take public safety as an example. We will voluntarily reduce our impact to the property tax levy by that year by $179,000. You don't need to put it on a referendum. You don't need to do anything else. We don't need a tax increase for that. We're not looking for it anymore. Blue means those are still hanging out there, other reductions. So you can see that amount for each committee. So Mr. Langreck passed out a survey. It should have, most of you are probably looking at it already, it should have your district number in red on the front. It's 4 pages, 2 pages front and back. So everything I just kind of went through, you don't need to, this introduction, you can read it as you're taking the survey, but we were just trying to give you a little bit more detail so you know all the work and investigation that's been done. And you're probably going to have a lot of questions. So you should use that report that I was referring to on your iPads previously if you have questions, and then you should contact any member of the referendum committee if you still have questions after looking at the report.
When is it due back, Sean?
So at the very top of the survey, it says, please return this survey to Administrative Assistant Cheryl Dole by the end of the day, Thursday, December 15th. So got 2 days to fill this out. I'll go through the timeline on the very last slide so you can understand why we need your answer in 2 days. But I'm just going to run through the questions really quick. And if anyone's got questions, we're happy to answer those. So if you go to page 2, so the back side of the first page, the first question is basically, how comfortable do you feel about shifting additional operational levy expenses to short-term borrowing? And there's some verbiage here that explains what we found out during our budget investigations. We found out there were 3 categories, kind of big pots of money still that are in the operating levy that could be shifted to short-term borrowing if the county board is comfortable with it. We're trying to gauge your comfort level with it. If you are not comfortable with shifting more operating money to the short-term borrowing notes that we do on an annual basis, in this chart where it says on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least comfortable and 10 being most comfortable, how do you feel about each one of these? Then you would put in a 1 if you're very uncomfortable with it. If you're very comfortable with it, you put in a 10, but we gave you a 1 through 10 so that you can, if you feel somewhere in the middle, you can tell us that too. 3 categories: highway department, asphalt and equipment purchases, court-ordered placements from the HHS department, and property liability, insurance, and workers' comp. And that's across all county departments. Second question, what % annual property tax increase are you comfortable with? So we know we started with $4.6 million in expenses we needed to handle. We're left with 3.3 million after the committees and boards did all their work. So we know that could be funded with a property tax increase. So our current property tax levy is 10.5 million. This chart, the upper right one on the screen here, this shows some different scenarios. If you were comfortable with a 2.5% increase each year, we would have almost 1.1 million. Our shortfall is 3.3 million. So we just want to know where on this chart you're comfortable. You don't have to pick 2.5 or 5%. You could say 3% or 4%. You can say -5% if you want. We don't care. Just put a number down in there.
And Sean, isn't it important to say that the annual percentage, we're only talking about the county share of the property tax?
Absolutely, yes.
So that's, the school might be doing some things at the same time.
I don't know what it is on everyone's taxes, but like on mine, we're about 40% of the property tax, the county is, but it might be different depending on your taxing authorities that you live in. And then the last question, how would you prioritize the following services? So we're thinking that the top rankings from this survey here will likely be funded with surpluses that come up if they come up. Say the state finally decides us to give us more shared revenue. That's an example of a surplus. And additional short-term borrowing, should you all be comfortable with additional short-term borrowing. Services with middle rankings will likely be recommended for placement on an operating levy referendum. And then services with bottom rankings will likely be permanently cut. So just to give you a rough idea of where we think the buckets are going to be, but we don't know where the lines are yet because we don't know how comfortable you are with a tax increase, what amount you would be comfortable with annually. So we're asking you to place an X in the third column of that chart for services you believe should be prioritized. There are 18 rows. We're allowing each person 10 X's. If you decide to mark 12 X's, then none of them count. Yeah, Supervisor Jen.
I don't understand this one.
Okay.
If I put an X, I'll just make something up, corner. Am I saying you should cut it or should not cut it? I don't get the X.
We're saying that those are your top priorities. So
Top priority, which way?
save, I think. A top priority to fund.
All right, that's what I make sure. If I put an X, I want it funded.
That's right.
So when it says reduce the 4-H position to 85%, if I put an X, I'm saying I don't want that to happen.
Correct. That's right.
Okay, just want to make sure, so I.
Yeah, so the fields are there, or the different departments, and then the explanation after that is what has been discussed. That's what they said they could do. So if that topic is a priority, put an X there. That'll get the point.
Meaning I don't like that they have the time.
Correct.
Okay.
Some lines say reduce and other lines don't say anything about reducing, but just ignore that. Just think about the topic. What's your top priority to keep funding? Yeah, so if your number one priority is the coroner, just make sure you put an X in there. If you're gonna prioritize less another line, don't put an X in there. Wherever you put X's, that means it's gonna bump up the average for the whole county board, that is more likely to get funded.
So do we have to do 10 X's?
No,
Okay,
you can mark up to 10 X's.
okay, that was my question.
So Sean, I have a question. That HHS, court-ordered adult institutional placement. If I want that to continue, I put an X there, correct?
That's correct.
May I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
I'm not very good on this government finances stuff. Can you tell me in a small way, what would be the advantage of being in the operating levy versus the short-term borrowing levy? Is there an easy answer to that?
So state statute right now curbs how much we can have an operational levy set against our net new construction each year. So it puts a ceiling on operational expenses. Some of the carve out the different valves that allow for you to exceed that is debt service. There's not a limit that's based on the statute of your net new construction. It's controlled kind of, if you will, in a different bucket based on your total equalized value and then a percentage of that you can have on it. So as Bill reported, we have about 65% capacity yet in that bucket that we can legally do. There's certain things that you can take and put into debt service, including capital projects, which predominantly is what we're doing with short-term notes. The state also then says there's other elements that you can put into short-term notes that Supervisor Murphy Lopez discussed that we became aware of during the process here. And those are different court-ordered actions and insurances, some nature of insurances. And there was maybe one other one we talked about tonight. So what that does is you're taking fundings that you have in your operational bucket, of which we're pushing up against the ceiling heavily. And we're displacing that and putting it into short-term notes. That way, then when you're still taxing for your operational funds, you're going to be using that to preserve other types of services. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that comes with two elements. Putting it into your debt service has an impact yet on your overall tax burden that you're going to be putting on your tax burden, on your people. And with short-term notes, all the principal and interest, in the practices that we've been doing is we take those notes out in November, we pay them back in March. So that comes with a pretty heavy impact because you're putting all the interest, all the principal into the next year's taxation. As an example, when we're doing our short-term notes, about $1 million equates to just over about $90 on $100,000 of property value.
And we started that 3 years ago, Administrator Langrick, the short-term borrowing.
It goes into your debt service, but I mean, you're paying it off the next year, so it really is, it's going to go away real quick. It's not really going to kind of stay there and hang on as how much debt service you're accruing because you're paying it off 5 months later. But it does go onto the tax bills. Everybody has to pay that. It becomes an extra revenue fund to bring in to provide funds for insurance revenues. So now you're paying for insurance over here in debt service, and all that money that you weren't, or that you previously were paying in insurance, now you can fill that up with increase to an administrator's salary, perhaps.
I have a question. Does anyone here have the Counties Association Green Book with them? Okay, look up the page that talks about indebtedness per county resident. See where Richland County ranks in terms of debt. And I know it's high. So we're not a very big county. Are we a poor county? Yeah, if you look at our per capita income. And I would remind you that just a small increase in interest, the property owner is significant because we're already at high levels. Well, our total indebtedness per individual.
General obligation debt per capita of 2020 was
Yeah.
1,414.
How does that rank us in the counties?
In the top quarter.
Top quarter. I think we might even be higher than that. But anyway, I'm just reminding you before you put down your books.
And Mr. Chair, if I can just add to, it's basically a tax increase. If you're,
Rate of 70.
if you're comfortable with short-term borrowing, you're saying, I'm comfortable as a county board member doing a tax increase myself. If you're saying you're not in support of short-term borrowing, that might be the meaning behind it, the major meaning. There might be a few other meanings, but you might be saying, no, I want the voters to decide all of this on the referendum. If you're okay with more short-term borrowing, we could do some of the tax increase ourselves. That's kind of the nature of the question. So that's the survey question number 3. Sorry, that last one was a little confusing. So thanks for asking those questions. So surveys, yeah, are due this Thursday. You can of course leave them here tonight if you want to just get it done. But just make sure that they get to Cheryl by the end of the day Thursday. Her email address and phone number is here. If people are not returning them, I've asked Mr. Langrek if they would reach out to folks just to remind people that we need them. I know some people are gone, like Mr. McKee is out of town right now. So if you need help filling it out, just call this number and ask for Cheryl and she'll help you fill it out. If there are many mistakes in it, I bet she'll even reach out to you to say, you marked 12 X's. Do you want to change this? So Next steps, we're
Isn't
gonna,
that like filling in absentee ballot information? So
fortunately, we don't have that
just making a,
Wisconsin Elections
Funny hair.
Commission over,
Okay,
or the Supreme Court overlooking us. As long as you all are all right with that. If you all don't want anyone to have corrections, then speak now. So next steps, we're gonna analyze the survey results. We're gonna draft a report next week. So that's why we need it quickly. We need time for them to analyze the results, average everything. And then we're hoping to have a final report to finance and personnel by January 3rd. So we'll probably meet once next week, the referendum committee, and then we'll be meeting that same day of the finance and personnel committee to finalize it. And then we're hoping to recommend action to the county board at our next meeting, January 17th.
Ms. Joyce. Of course, she'll be out of town when we go.
Do you know, since one of the members of the committee is from the school district, if they are going to have a referendum? Because knowing if they're going to have a referendum, that might change a little bit how I feel about things, knowing that they're going to ask for more money too.
We've heard no indications that they're going to referendum in April either, and there are no other elections next year besides April. So I think the next opportunity after that would be early 2024.
Okay, good, thanks.
There are other school districts though involved, so.
Did anyone
Mr.
from that
Chair?
committee want to say anything?
One of our initial things was we checked with neighbors
Mr. Chair?
to see if there were any contemplated. And at the time we checked, I don't believe there were.
Yeah, Mr. Turk was just saying, we looked into school boards. We didn't find out about any additional referendum that are being planned for April.
River Valley just had a referendum in April, so they won't have one for 3 more years.
And Sean, isn't it true that there were several referendums similar by municipalities? And I don't know if there was any county.
Mr. Chair, we looked at the referendums that ran this past election. There was only one county that did a referendum. There were, I forget, 15 or 20 municipalities that did, and most of those did pass. And so these were for additional services that the municipalities wanted to fund. There were only a couple that were strictly just to maintain existing services.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so you got your work cut out for you. We got to get this done, get it back in. We'll do it, I know. So.
Thanks for your input. We really appreciate it and need to hear your opinion. So thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Who's speaking? Richard McKee, go ahead, please.
Yes, I won't be home until Friday. Can I contact Cheryl and have her send it to me in a Word file on my laptop?
Yes.
Okay, how do I go about doing that?
It's done.
Okay.
Done. Okay. All right. Anything under strategic plan progress report?
Hi, I was asked by Supervisor Murphy Lopez to provide an update on our strategic plan. I know it's really late, so I'm going to be super quick just to explain what's in your folder. On 22D, that's the current from Administrator Langrek, the most updated work plan for the strategic plan. If you guys remember, we passed that in March of this year. It's a 2 to 3 year plan, and it had an attached work plan, which was really to monitor progress. The now Rules and Strategic Planning Committee is tasked with monitoring that quarterly. The work plan just outlines like what our priorities are and how we're going to accomplish that with tactics, actions, performance metrics, and end dates. So on the slide 22D, It just lists out what has actually been completed and been able to be taken off or checked off on our strategic plan. I do want to just add, a lot of them though are going to be ongoing or have end dates that are further in the future. But the second or the last slide in 22D lists off everything that we have done as of December 2022.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Should we reconvene for another hour or should we take anything else, Clint, down there?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, and I think Clerk Kalish, we're struggling through, I think. Attorney Wendell for his help. And all of you. So get these things back into Cheryl, or if you want to do it tonight, we'll leave the lights on. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Manning. Second. Ms. Fleming, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.